So we're here today to talk about data visualization using Power BI. My name is Rob McGowan, and joining us today will be Toby Lumbar, who I'll allow to introduce himself as we get through to the Power BI demo. So very quickly, just by way of an agenda of what we're going to be covering today, a bit of an introduction just to give you a bit of an idea and a flavour of who iCoTech are, what we do, where we work, the type of work we've done, etc. Then we're going to do a very quick high-level overview of Power BI just to introduce the subject. Then we'll take a look at some examples of data visualization. And at that point, then we'll hand over to Toby, who's going to be taking us through quite a detailed Power BI demo. And then towards the end, then we'll have a very quick kind of summary of something that we offer here, which is Power Platform as a Service. And we'll have some time, as promised, to go through the Q&A. So if there's an opportunity to return any time back to your diaries, we'll do everything we can to try and give you 5-10 minutes before your next call. But yeah. We're really keen to make sure that we try and cover as much as we can here. So introductions, overviews, we'll try and keep that relatively brief. So what do we do here at iCoTech Services? We specialize really in 4 key areas. So we're a Microsoft Gold implementation partner, and our vision and our mission really is to empower business leaders to make better decisions utilizing 365. So what that's centered around, really the core of what we do is we build solutions within the 365 platform. So really helping organizations to leverage the power of the Microsoft ecosystem to help them build a more modern, more digital workplace. We also have a small range of products that are still coming to the market now, and we're still refining them and working on them, taking just advantage of things like Power Apps and various other Microsoft applications. We're starting to develop a small range of product offerings. We also offer service. So this is something that we're looking to potentially introduce a couple of new areas here. So I'm not going to talk too much about service at the moment, but every project, every solution that we work with, every partner that we're engaged with, we always offer some form of support to that environment, whether it's supporting applications or, supporting teams that are trying to do more with Power BI, for example. If you're generating reports and you need a hand, we can be there really as a service partner to help assist you. And then finally, we offer a lot in the space of consulting. So again, without deep diving that too much, hopefully if you're interested in kind of a bit more background about what we do and the way that we work, feel free to go and have a look at the website. Everything should be on there to give you a bit more of a flavor. So Microsoft 365 specialist applications is really what we're experts at. So everything from Project Online, Power Applications, Power BI, which obviously we're here to talk to you about today, and also Dynamics 365. There's a number of component pieces then that fall within that underneath. So we've just called out a couple of them there just to give everyone a very broad level overview of what we kind of do and what we work with in this space. So our approach is very much, as it is on screen there. I'm not going to deep dive every single bit of it, but feel free to just kind of read through this at your own pace or circle back to the slides, which we'll send out to following the session to get an idea of kind of how we work. So, there's a few bits in there really though, just to call out. Relationships and networking is very important to us here. And everything else that comes around that, you can see we've got people and collaboration as well, which is in that same space. So we're very much a people-driven business. Although we work with a lot of data and a lot of very technical products and solutions, we're very driven by the people aspect of it and what it actually means to end users to really help empower those businesses. So, and all of that is centered around delivering value at pace for our clients. So who are our clients? Just a very high level glance at some of the people that we work with. So we work with the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, Office for National Statistics, Betty's and Taylor's, who are the manufacturers for Yorkshire Tea, DEFRA, ACAS, IPO. There's some names in there that hopefully everyone that's on the call here will recognize, just to give you an idea of the types of space that we operate in. We do a lot of work in the private sector as well, but primarily I think a lot of our background is focused around actually servicing the public sector. So we're very fortunate as an organization to be able to work in both of those areas really. The Power Platform. I'm really sorry, guys. I don't know what's happened to this graphic. When I had it up and I tested this, it all seemed to be working absolutely fine. But I think you've got the 8-bit version of the Microsoft Power Platform summary here, so apologies. But as most of you will probably know on the call here today, the Microsoft Power Platform is built on these kind of 4 key component parts, which is Power BI, which is what we're going to be taking a deeper look at today, Power Apps, Power Automate, and then Power Virtual Agents. All of this then is underpinned by a series of data connectors, the AI builder, and of course the Dataverse that helps centralize that data and provide that single source of the truth. So very, very, very high level. Just look there at the Power Platform. I think we've done a webinar topic previously on every single one of these component parts. So if you want to really go and have a deep dive about each of them, feel free to look back at our previous content, go to our YouTube channel, have a look, because there's a number of videos there. So I don't want to spend too much of the session time that we've got today to talk about them. Power BI is an overview. Hopefully everybody that's on the call here today will have an idea and an understanding of what Power BI is and what it can potentially offer your organization. If you don't, we've got a couple of other sessions that are being run alongside this on a kind of a 4 to 6 weekly basis. So we've sort of split the sessions out into something a little bit more technical with a bit more of a demonstration aspect, which is what we're doing today. And then we've got a series of kind of introductions, overviews, bit of history, bit of understanding about what the product is and kind of what it can do and what it can offer your organization. But at a very, very high level, obviously it's a technology-driven business intelligence tool provided by Microsoft for analyzing and visualizing data. So hopefully everyone that's on the call here today has a very, very fundamental understanding, or is at least aware of Power BI and the way that it works. But if not, as I said, feel free to go back through and have a look at some of our previous sessions where we do that kind of high level overview and an explanation of what it can offer. So with that being said, some examples of data visualization using Power BI. I'm hoping that this is going to work quite easily for me. I'm just going to jump in here just to provide a couple of very, very high level kind of views of what can be done using Power BI. So these aren't our examples, these are just examples that I've taken from the web, but just because they're both really in the same sort of space and they're looking at similar types of things, hopefully this will just kind of set the scene for some different kind of ways that you can visualize your data in Power BI. So what we have here is essentially a home page for Power BI reports. We can see at the bottom here we've got a 42-page report, which of course we're not going to go and deep dive today and go through absolutely everything on there. But just to give you a very quick kind of flavor of what it can do for your business, in this example, they've got it kind of split down to a series of shortcuts here, which will take you to the relevant page within the Power BI report. For example, if you want to go and have a look at the COVID-19 testing data here, hopefully it will work for me. It will. Great. That'll take us into an alternative page, and the look and feel here, is quite unique. But there's a huge variation on different ways that we can visualize data using Power BI, which is what Toby's really going to take us through today and give you guys an example of. So this is just one example out of many, as we kind of navigate through the various different pages and, start looking at some of the data here. There's lots and lots of different ways that you can manipulate it to go and draw those conclusions that you're looking for. But another flavor on it, and again, I've only chosen this just because it's in the same kind of spaces as the previous one. This is another example of a landing dashboard that organizations are using to track, in this example, the vaccine deliveries throughout the Americas. And you can see that although the look and feel of it is quite different to the previous one that we were looking at, it's all very much a case of what's going to be the right solution for your business. How do we visualize that data in the best possible way? So in this example, they've got kind of an interactive map where you can go in and start to deep dive some of that data, and you can see the statistics on the left-hand side of this dashboard changing as we go and call out, these various different locations and different areas and different countries, etc. So that at a very, very high level is just a couple of very quick examples to give you a bit of an idea of what can be done using the tool and the types of different directions you could go in it. There's a million different examples that we could probably provide here of how people are using Power BI differently, but that's really not the purpose of today's session, to show you every kind of look and feel and variation on what can be done with it. It's really just to give you some examples, just to understand, the real power of the tool. But With that being said, guys, I'm going to hand over now to Toby Lombard to really get into the meat of this presentation. Thank you ever so much for sitting through this introduction. And Toby, if you're okay, I'll hand over to you now.
That's great. Thank you very much, Rob. So let me just start by sharing my screen. Thank you for that introduction and that overview. Let me introduce myself first of all. So my name is Toby Lombard. I'm from iCoTech. I'm the head of PPM delivery. So everything kind of project related, program related that we do for our clients sits under me, and that includes kind of reporting and business intelligence as well. And given we're a Microsoft partner, we obviously use Power BI as that primary mechanism to deliver some of that business intelligence back to some of our clients. So what I wanted to do today was really give you an overview of Power BI, and I was going to do that by connecting up some data, doing a real life demo. So starting with absolutely nothing whatsoever. I've got some data I can show you. I was going to connect that data, I was going to do some visualization on it, and I'm going to publish that up. So we can look at that as an end user as well. So just before I get started with this, I just want to talk a little bit about the tools. What is Power BI? What does it actually functionally mean? Because there's a lot of confusion around a lot of the customers we talk to who are new to using Power BI. They don't really understand the different components and what makes it up. So essentially, within Power BI, there are two tools, two aspects to it. There's what's called a desktop tool, and then there's what's called the Power BI service. So I'll just deal with those one at a time. The first one is the desktop tool, and that is essentially what report authors will use to connect to data, to do some form of transformations on that data, and then to actually build the reports. Once that's complete, what they will do is they will publish those reports up to what's called the Power BI service. And the service is then essentially a website that allows you to interact with those reports from an end user perspective. Now, there's lots and lots of other things we can do with those reports as well, and the service is a very powerful thing. But basically, if you get in your head that you've got the Power BI desktop application you use for editing and creating reports, and then the service which is more used for consuming the reports as an end user. Now, I'm working on the basis that most people don't know a lot about Power BI. You haven't really used it, so this is just a very basic run through. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take two data sets, which are essentially some data over here about projects, which is in Excel, and a whole load of stuff that probably doesn't make a lot of sense at the moment. And then what we've got is some risks that are associated with those projects. And these are all sitting in this great big text file just here. So we're going to bring in these two data sources, we're going to lump them together, and then hopefully we're going to make some sense out of that data as well. Okay, so excuse me, I'm just going to turn my camera off because sometimes that helps a little bit with the connectivity. Okay, so let's get started then. So first thing to show you is the Power BI desktop application itself. For those of you who are not familiar with it, this is what it looks like. Essentially, what you have in the middle is what's called the canvas. So the canvas is where the actual visuals will go themselves. And then the canvas can be divided into multiple pages as well. So you're not limited to trying to cram all your visuals just into one page. You can have lots of different pages. So one of the things to say about Power BI in terms of the data is you can pretty much connect to anything you like. If you want to connect to an Excel document on SharePoint, if you want to connect to a SQL database that you might have, I can only see you, not my screen. You can't see my screen. Okay, let me try that again. Okay. How's that, guys? Hopefully everyone can now see that. If anyone can't see that, then please yell. I made the broad assumption that everybody can. So in terms of data, you can data you can bring into Power BI, you can literally connect to anything. As long as there is a valid data source, even kind of SaaS services like Google, you can connect data up from there. You can even scrape data from websites. So data doesn't necessarily always have to be in a completely structured format as well. So what we're going to do in this example is we're going to connect in some data from Excel and from a text file as well. So I'm going to start with the Excel document. And there's a couple of things I could do here. The key thing is this bit over here, which is transforming data. And this really takes me to another part of Power BI desktop that's called PowerQuery. And this is the bit that enables me to do what's called my ETL work. So extract, transform, load. So that is how you connect the data, how you do some changes on it, and then take that data and load that out. Now I could go straight into that tool, or there's a slightly easier way over here. I could say, well, I want to bring some data in from Excel, so I can just go directly to an Excel workbook. So I click that, a little dialog comes up. So what do I want to connect to? Well, conveniently, I want to connect to this file just here. So I'm going to select that and click OK. And what Power BI will do is then start to load that data into the data model itself. So first thing I'm going to see is a list of all the sheets and all the tables that may exist in this particular file. Now, this one's a really simple file. I've essentially just got one sheet of data and nothing else in there. But if I had multiple sheets, I would see them all listed down here. But I've only got one, so I'm just going to select that one as the starting point. And then Power BI will give me a little preview to say, OK, what's some of my data in there? Is this actually the data I want, or is this something else? But this is definitely what I want. And essentially then I've got two options. I can load this directly into the data model. So if the data was already transformed and it was in a nice clean state, then I could bring that straight in. But in this case, there's lots of extra stuff in there. We need to do a bit of data work around this. So actually I need to do some work on the data. I need to do some transformations. So I'm going to click transform data at that point in time. And this is where it will now load up this other component of Power BI that I was talking about. So this is now the PowerQuery component. And incidentally, you have PowerQuery in Excel as well. You have PowerQuery that is driving something called data flows. So PowerQuery is available for lots of different components within Microsoft. It's very much a shared component. OK, so just to talk about PowerQuery very simply, very quickly, and see what you can see. Over here on the left-hand side, we've got what's called the queries panel. And this will give us a list of all the tables that we're interacting with. At the moment, we've only got one. Over here on the right-hand side, we've got what's called applied steps. And what PowerQuery is doing is each time you put a transformation into the data, this will remember what you did. So it's a little bit like opening Excel, doing a copy and paste, resourcing the data, moving things around, moving some columns around. What PowerQuery is doing is essentially remembering each of those steps you're doing. And they're in each of these applied steps down here. And each time you go to refresh the data, it will just repeat those steps over and over again. So that's fundamentally how it works. In the middle, we've got the actual data coming through, and we see a bit of a preview of this. And then along the top, we've got a toolbar with lots and lots of different options on here. Now, I'm not going to have time to go through all of these, unfortunately, but we give you a quick flavour as to what some of these can do. So what you might notice over here as well is Power BI has already used a bit of intelligence, and it's put some applied steps in automatically. So if you may remember back in our Excel document, we just had a standard Excel sheet. There was no headers. It wasn't formatted as a table. But what Power BI has done is it's recognized that the first row was probably the header column, the header of the columns. So it's automatically promoted that to some headers. OK, so essentially, that's kind of how it imported the data. It's recognized that this row along here is kind of probably a header. So it automatically promotes those up. Now, we could change that if we want, but actually, we're quite happy with that. It's then gone through and it's done some checks on the data, and it's made a guess as to what is the data type for each one of these. And this is represented by this little icon up here. So the first one is text, as you can see here. But this one, it's had a guess. It's made up of true and falses. It's Boolean, essentially. So it's kind of detected that it's a true-false data type. So it does that for all the data and to get us started. Next thing we want to do then is we've got lots and lots and lots of fields in here, and we don't need all of these. They're just going to get in the way. And ultimately, if we've got large data sets, it's not going to be a very efficient way of working with Power BI. It's just going to create lots of extra data, and data takes extra time to process and everything else. So we want to get rid of some of this data. There's lots and lots of different ways of doing this. You can highlight a column and delete it, but a really quick way is just coming up here to choose columns. So if I click on this, Power BI will then give me a list of all the columns that exist in this particular table, and I can just choose which ones I want. And perhaps there's an easy way of doing that. I tend to unselect all because I only want a few of these, and then I can run through the data and I can actually select the ones I want. So I'm just going to go through and do this now. There's a few that I want to get in there. So I want to get start date. We want to get finish date. It always helps if I can spell. Not one of my strong points, I'm afraid. We want to get our SRO for our project. bring that piece of data in. We want to know the location. We want to know what stage the project's at. And then we probably want to have a RAG or two. So let's bring in our delivery confidence RAG. Okay, so I'm going to click OK and watch what happens. All of those other fields then are essentially taken out of the data. So they're not been deleted, they've just been hidden from view. And as it's done this, Power BI has applied another step down here as well. Okay, so if I went back to the previous step, you see that I've got lots of fields there. I've then chosen to remove some fields, and bang, it's taken that data out. Okay, this is great, but actually I want a little bit less than this as well. So just glancing down my list here, I can see I've got some closed projects. Well, they're of no interest to me. I don't want to see closed projects. So we can filter that data out. And we can do that by coming in here. We could just select the ones we want, very similar to Excel, or I'm going to do it in a slightly more complex way. So I'm going to go into text filter equals, and hopefully you're recognizing this from Excel where you can use a filter. And we're going to say, don't show me stages that are equal closed. Click apply, and then you see straight away it's taken out those closed records. Okay, great. So one more thing I may want is I can see all my different stages down here, but maybe I need to group these stages up together because I don't want to have all this distribution. I just want to know which ones are actually in delivery and which ones might be before delivery. So what we can do is we're not stuck with the data that we're importing. We can actually create some new data on the fly as well. And we can do this by coming up to add column. And we're going to do add a new column. And there's lots of different ways of adding columns, but I'm going to use a really simple one, which is just a conditional column. So I'm going to select this. First thing I need to do is give it a name. So let's call that stage group. And what we need to do is give it some logic in here. So our first step is if stage is equal to, let's do alpha, then we want an output of delivery. And then we're going to add a second clause where if stage is equal to beta, and we also want that to say delivery. Otherwise, as far as we're concerned, the project is pre-delivery. Okay, so hopefully you get what we're doing. We're just looking at the value in one field. We're creating a new field based off that value. We put a bit of an if statement in there. We click OK. And then you see straight away, we've created a new column down here. And then these are grouping stages either into delivery or pre-delivery based on the value within stage. Okay, there is loads more powers, loads more things that we can do within PowerQuery itself. I could literally spend the next 3 hours just talking to you around some of these different components. Some of these things are really fancy. Some of them are relatively simple. So if we wanted to merge different tables together, we can do that. If we want to do joins in the data, we can do that. If we want to bring in data from other elements, we can do that. If we want to use some artificial intelligence and use some APIs to connect to other things, if we want to use Python or R to connect to other data, we've got the ability to do all this different stuff. So this is an extremely powerful tool that you can use to manipulate and change your data. And as I say, the key thing is you've got this tool already. It's in the back of Excel. So as long as you're using Excel, I think 2013 or more, you already have this tool. Go and have a look, go and have a play. So we've got this, and this is brilliant, but we want to get some more data in here as well. So we've brought in our project data, but we also want to bring in our risk data as well. So what we can do is we can say new query, and just to give you a little view of kind of what kind of data sources PowerQuery can connect to. Just going to open this one up, and I'm just going to run down this list really quickly. And these are called connectors. And as I say, each of these connectors can connect to a different data type. So you've got some basic ones, Excel, text, XML, that you're probably familiar with. And then we've got a whole raft of various different things down here. I mean, half of these, I have no idea what half of them are, but you've got SAP, MySQL, IBM, Google, loads of different stuff from Azure, data flows, SharePoint, Azure, Salesforce. I mean, the list just goes on forever. So there are loads and loads of different data connectors. guaranteed if the one you want isn't in there, if you're connecting something very obscure, then probably someone somewhere has written one. But we're keeping it nice and simple today. So we're just going to connect to a text file, and this is where our risk data is. So just as we did for the Excel document, with same text, it's then prompts me to go and find my document. So it's this document here, it's my risks.txt file. And then PowerQuery will bring that in. It will make some guesses on the data. So just as it did with the Excel document, it's guessed at the type of file, it's guessed at how this text file is actually arranged. So it's assumed there's a tab delimiter between the data. So if I change that to colons, it doesn't really look very good, or comma kind of looks a bit terrible. So it guessed correctly that in fact this is a tab delimited document. And again, I can just scroll through my my preview here, and I can kind of see that that looks okay. That's kind of what I'm expecting. So I'm going to click OK. And what PowerQuery will now do is bring this into PowerQuery as well. Again, you'll see it's made a couple of steps, a couple of guesses here. So it's promoted the headers. So prior to that, it's just assumed this is column 1, column 2, column 3, but then it guesses that the first row, looking at the data, is a header, so it automatically does it. And then it changes some of the data types as well. So I'm not going to do a lot more on this because I think we've got some data. We've probably got enough that we can go away and start playing with. So I'm now going to click Close and Apply. And what this is going to do is this is going to it's going to refresh this data. So it's going to go back to those base documents. It's going to then load this data into Power BI, into what's called the data model within Power BI. And this is going to enable us to actually start to do some work at this particular stage, to actually start to build some visuals. So first thing I'm going to do is I've just done some data work, but you know, horrible things do happen in the world. So I am just going to go and do a little save at this point in time. So we're going to call this because last thing we want is everything to crash and us to lose all of our work. So let's just talk about what we've got in front of us right now. We've got the canvas, and on the canvas we can start to build our reports and whatever we want to go on here. Over on the right hand side, we've got what are called visuals, and visuals are really the key thing. So visuals are kind of the charts, or they are the things that bring the data to life. And Power BI comes with these standard visuals. So you've got things like a pie chart or a card, which is just some information, or something like a bar chart. So relatively standard ones. There's a few more funky ones down the bottom as well, and there's one that I will show you if we've got a bit of time. But this is also quite extensible, so you can actually go out and get additional visuals to do some very funky things. You can actually build them yourself if you really got the skills to do that. Again, if we've got a bit of time, I'll show you how you can go off and go to what's called the marketplace or app source to go and do that. A little bit further over here, this is a key thing. So these are our two tables, so our project table and our risk table. And if I open these up, you can then see all of the data fields that I brought in from the Excel document and the text document. Along the top, we've got the ribbon. So these are essentially the tools that we can use as we're starting to build up our reports. And as per the ribbon in Word or Excel, this is conditional on what you might be clicking. So if we click on certain things, then we get certain different options within the ribbon as well. And then down the side, so we've got the report, which is what we currently got. We can go and look at the data and do a bit of data work if we want. So kind of similar to PowerQuery, but allowing us to do a few extra things. And then we can also go and look at the relationships. And I'm just going to talk about this for a second because this is quite important. If you're familiar with kind of relationships between tables, what Power BI does is this will build some relationships when you first import the data. So it will take a bit of a guess. And again, it's using the intelligence within Power BI. Sometimes it's a bit too intelligent, sometimes it's not very intelligent at all. But it's using a bit of a guess to work out how the tables relate to each other. And in this example, it looks like it's done a pretty good job. So maybe if we double click on that, we can just see what's going on. We can see in here it's made a connection between the risk table and the project table. So they're the only two tables I've got, but it's connected it on project ID. And essentially what it's saying is there is a single record in the project, and then there might be multiple related records within the risk table over here, which is exactly what we wanted it to do. So well done Power BI for getting that bit right. You can go in and change that. Maybe it is actually a many-to-many relationship, so you have the ability to change that. And if you wanted to actually control these relationships, you can stop Power BI creating them on the fly, and you can go in and manually create them yourselves if you need to. Okay, there's one other concept in Power BI that I probably just need to mention at this stage, and that's something called DAX. Okay, that's DAX. So DAX means data analysis expressions, and essentially it's a kind of formula language that's used in analytical services. It's used in Power BI. It's used in Power Pivot in Excel. And it allows you to build formulas and allows you to essentially do stuff. And sorry to use the word stuff, but do stuff with the data. So essentially allows you to do some form of analysis on it. It allows you to do some stuff that's kind of similar in PowerQuery, so we can build extra columns or we can build tables, but also allows you to run calculations through the data as well. Now DAX is kind of similar to Excel formula language, if you're familiar with that. So you can write things like if, and you have very similar language. It is slightly different, and it has got some quirks of its own. And within DAX itself, there's essentially two things you can really do with it. One is to build what are called calculated columns, and one is to build what are called measures. And there's always a little bit of confusion around what's the difference between a calculated column and a measure. So a calculated column is essentially where you take a table of data, so maybe something like this, and essentially it allows you to add on additional columns on the side. Okay, so a little bit like in Excel, where you would, if you wanted some more information, then you have to build those extra formulas along the side, maybe put in a sum or something like that. And that's kind of what a calculated column is. Now you can do that in PowerQuery, you can do that in through DAX. There's kind of pros and cons in doing it in different ways. But the other element is a measure. And what a measure allows you to do, or what a measure does, is ultimately it recalculates itself based on the aggregation that you have in the data. So a calculated column essentially always exists at the row level, whereas a measure can exist at any level I want. So it could exist at a row level, but ultimately if I started to aggregate my data by stage group or by SRO, it will automatically recalculate itself as it goes through. Now I'm going to do a couple of things in a minute, and that hopefully will bring that to life a little bit more, because it's a little bit of a complex thing to understand. But before we start building anything, we just need to do a couple of things with our data as well. So I can come into my data over here. I can see all the fields in the table. So this is great, but first thing I notice is they're not named very well. So maybe I want to come in here and give them a slightly better name. So I can double click on the name itself, and I can just go through and I can actually rename these things. So they make a little bit more sense for the end user. Let's call that one name. I think SRO we're kind of okay with. Let's put a space in there. Okay, that's great. So we kind of got something that looks a little bit better, a little bit more presentable to the end user. Other thing we need to do at this stage is we need to define some data types within the data as well. So we can do this in PowerQuery, but then Power BI through the desktop element allows you to do a little bit more on top of that. So, for example, we've got some dates up here. So we've got a project finish date and our project start date. And if I look over here, I can then see it's got some automatic formatting applied. Now, at the moment, by default, it's giving me the date and the time. Well, I don't really need to show the end user the time. It doesn't really matter when the project finishes. In terms of its time, the date is the important thing. So I'm just going to change that to a short date. And I'm going to do the same with the start date as well. Again, that just needs to be shown as a short date. Take that one away. That's brilliant. The rest of them, I think, are all text. So again, we can look up here. So yeah, we're pretty happy with text. And then the one I want to do something else with, and hopefully it will become clear why in a minute, is I want to do something around location. So location is basically some postcodes, but we want to end up plotting this on the map. So what we need to do is we need to give Power BI a bit of information. We need to tell it that location actually contains some special data. And we can do this by using the data category over here. So if I drop this down, you'll see I've got a number of different options in here. So how should Power BI actually recognize and address this particular field, and what should it do with it? And in this instance, I'm telling it it's a postcode. And in a minute, you will see how we can actually use that. You'll also note it's given a little icon next to it, so we can see that we've given it a special data category. Okay, so almost ready to start building some reports, building some visuals, and making this look nice. Last thing we need to do is actually build some measures into this as well. What we can do is we can select the table where we want the measure to live, and we can come up to here and say a new measure, and then that will open up this little menu bar at the top. So my first measure, I'm going to do two really simple measures in this. I'm just going to do the count of projects and the count of risks, because that's kind of what I need to know. What I'm going to do is type in the name. So this will be the field itself. So number of projects equals, and now we're going to build in a formula. And our formula is really simple. It's just count rows of, so count the number of rows in the project table. And remember, this is a measure, so this measure will interact and change with the data as we aggregate this through. Bear with me, that will make sense as we come to put some data on the canvas. So I'm just going to hit enter on that, and you see this is now added it into the data model over here, and I'm going to come into risks, and essentially I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to create a new measure in here, but this one I'm going to call number of risks, not number of projects, and we're going to do it in exactly the same way again. So count rows and just risks. So count the number of records that you have in the risk table. Hit enter, and then you'll see down the bottom that added that through as a measure in here. Okay, one more thing I'm going to do, and then I promise we will start building some visuals, is I'm going to build a bit of a hierarchy here. So we can use the data to build a hierarchy on itself. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me just show you, because it'll probably make a bit more sense. We've got stage in here, but then we've built this extra value in here called stage group. And essentially we have this group consists of the different stages within here. So essentially we can define these two fields and we can build them together because there is a natural relationship between them. And we can just say create hierarchy, and you see instantly it's then created this new field in there called stage group hierarchy, and then I can come into stage, hit the three buttons, add to hierarchy, and I want to add it in there. Okay, and you see under there then I've created this hierarchy where we've got stage at the bottom because there's 5 different stage codes, and then we've got 2 different stage groups, and that essentially then is our stage group hierarchy. So this can be really useful if you're looking at departmental hierarchies or even managerial hierarchies, perhaps account code hierarchies within your finance terms, whatever you need. Okay, so let's go start building things. I'm going to do some of this stuff fairly quickly, so bear with me as we do this. First thing we need to do, of course, is we need to add on an icon or some kind of image, because no report is good without an image. So go up to the menu, I've selected insert image. I can go and put whatever image I want in here, but I'm just going to put this little Power BI one in here. And then we also really should give it a title. So I'm just going to give it a little text box in here, and let's call that sample projects. Okay, maybe make this a little bit bigger because that's a little bit small. So that's 28. We can resize the text box. We can reposition the text box. Let's put that up there. We've got these helpful little red lines that kind of align everything we're doing. So that's really good. Brilliant. Okay, next thing, let's have a look at our number of projects by our stage hierarchy, our thing we've created over here. So I'm going to go over to my visualizations. I want a pie chart. I'm going to select pie chart. So this is a pie chart over here. Let's just space that out a little bit. And key thing, as I click on this, oops, I didn't want to do that. We'll get rid of that for a second. As I click on this, you will then see in this section over here, it's allowing me to put in some options. So what do I want to be shown on this pie chart? So what I want to see is my values, is my number of projects. Okay, and instantly there, remember this is my measure, instantly there I can see I've got 30 projects. But actually I want them by my stage group. So let's do that by our details. And as you can see, what it's created in here is it's given us our pre-delivery projects and then our delivery projects in here, based on that stage group within that hierarchy. Now, because this is hierarchy, we can actually drill down through that. Why isn't that put stage on there? Put stage on there as well. Oops, let's do that one more time because that's clearly not working very well. Let's throw that one on there. Why are you not liking that? Okay, we can do this in a slightly different way, which is we don't actually even need to build the hierarchy in there. We can just do it through there. Okay, so we'll just do it by stage for the moment, but essentially you can see how it's breaking them up by the different stage codes, and you can see the number of projects with a little percentage to say that percentage distribution for each stage. Now, next to this, we've got a little format option. And essentially, I can format any part of this pie chart that I want. So if I want to change the any part of the legend, any part of the color, the font, if I want to change the data colors associated with this, I want to change the title, the background, how it interacts, anything you can imagine around this little pie chart, we can change. There's an awful lot of power over that. Now, unfortunately, we definitely don't have time to go through all of these things. But just always be aware you've got these format options over here, and you can do all kinds of formatting and making your chart look exactly as you want. So we're going to add on a few more things into here. So let's go for a chart next. So maybe what we want to understand is we've got a number of projects by stage, but actually we want to know our projects by RAG as well. So we've got RAG here, and we've got a number of projects. So we're going to put our values as number of projects, and then we've got our RAG. Maybe let's drop that either into the axes, or in fact we can drop them down into the legend depending on how we want that displayed. So I think probably axes makes a bit more sense. So we can see our amber, green and red, and this is really where the power of Power BI comes in, and this is the interaction, and this is the real power of the end user. If we then clicked on the projects which are red, what you will then see is this will filter down the rest of the report based on this filter context. Okay, so this is showing me these projects that are in red are in fact only in feasibility or discovery. And alternatively, if I clicked on those projects that are in startup, that will tell me what are the ranks for those particular two projects. Now we can build all kinds of extra stuff in here. We can build some drill through and some other stuff in here. We're not going to have time to do that today, but at least hopefully it's giving you a bit of a feel for how we can build these reports and interact between them. What we can do as well, this doesn't make much sense in terms of its color, so we can go in and actually define these colors ourselves. So amber, let's go and select kind of an amber looking color. That looks good, doesn't it? Green, let's go into more colors again. Okay, that's kind of a horrible bright green. And red, of course, well, we're going to go right up the end of the spectrum, go for something like that. So to make it quite clear what we actually represent to the end user. Okay, so we'll stretch that one out. I'm going to add in one more thing in here, if I can remember where it is. So my Q&A. I'm going to come back to this in a second. So once we publish this and look at this on the service, I'm going to show you what that actually does. But we will hold off for a second. So we've got some information around projects, and now what we want to do is bring some of the risk data in as well. Okay, so this is great. This is telling us how many projects we've got and how many are each stage and each RAG. But actually, we want to know some information about the risks that are associated to them as well. On that, classic thing on Power BI is if you want to add a visual in, you need to make sure you click off the visual first of all, and then click that to add a new one in. So in this section down here, what we want to do is we want to see a number of risks we got per each project. First thing we do is drag some information in. So let's drag in our project name. Where is my name? There it is. So that is essentially in rows, and we can see each of our project names over here. But then we want to see the number of risks in our values. Drag that. Let's just drag that over a little bit over there. So here we can see for each of our projects how many risks each of them have. Okay, that's great, but actually I know some of these risks aren't current active. I know some of them have actually been completed. So what we can do is we can drag status into the column, and you will then see Power BI will change this and it will break up the number of risks by their status, whether they're active or closed. So we can see in this project here, there are 4 active risks, but actually there are 25 closed risks, 29 in total. Essentially what we got here is to use Excel language, we've got a pivot table pretty much. Again, this interacts with the data up here. So if I clicked on, you just see those projects in alpha, this will only give me a view of those risks and those projects which are in alpha as well. Okay, we're going to throw in a couple of things very quickly in here. I'm probably going to throw one more thing in just because we're getting a little bit short on time. But I talked previously around having a location. Done it again. So make sure you always click on the white background. And here we go. We're going to throw in a map into here. So maybe what we want to know is where are our projects actually based? And we had a location field in here. I can drop that into location. I then want to see my measure associated with it. So maybe the number of projects is related to the size of the bubble, essentially relates to the number of projects in each location. And simply by having postcode assigned to each of the projects, you can see that very quickly I was able to sort of basically plot that data onto a map. Power BI did that all automatically for me. It knows where the postcodes are relative to that location in the UK, and it's automatically done that. Now maybe I want a little bit more information. So this is great, but maybe I want to break the this bubble up by stage as well. So I can throw that into my legend, and you can there see it's basically a little pie chart broken up by each of these different stages. I think that's probably a bit too much, to be honest. We'll take that off. But with this, I can hover over that, and then it will then tell me the number of projects in each of these locations. Again, this is all interactive with everything else. So if I just clicked on part of the projects, it will then filter down that map as well to show me where those projects are based. Okay, I'm going to do a couple of things very quickly. So we can rename the pages. So let's just call this overview. And then I mentioned that you can get other visuals as well. You're not just limited to the ones that you have out of Power BI. So you can do this by clicking the three dots over here and saying get more visuals. You can actually, if you've got one that are locally or one you've created, you can import them. But generally how this works is you can go to what's called App Source. So this is kind of the Microsoft Store, and you can download them. So we are doing project management, and no project management is complete without a Gantt chart. So I'm going to import the Gantt chart visual in, click on that, get a bit of information about it, then you can say get it now. A little message tell me that's now imported, and as you can see down here, it's now created a new visual in this report. So I'm going to create a new page, and I'm going to call this page the Gantt page. We are going to throw in this visual, and we're going to make it take up the entire page. And maybe in here we're going to say, right, what do we want? We want to see our projects by start and end date. Unfortunately, we have a finish date and we have a start date. We want to see it broken down by project name. So that would be the task. And then very quickly, we have plotted our individual projects down here and basically their start and finish dates across the top. Now, this isn't the best format initially, so maybe we want to do a bit of work on here. What do we want to do? We want to go into, if I can remember where the individual settings are. So we want to give this fact a bit more width in there. So there we go. We can see a bit more around this. What else can we change in here? If I can remember where some of the settings are, and this is one of the issues with Power BI is remembering where all the particular issues are. Here we go. We don't actually want to see this by week. Perhaps we want to see this by year. There we go. That makes a little bit more sense. So now we have a Gantt chart for all of our projects. We can do a little bit more in here as well. So maybe we want to look at this by our SRO. So we can put our SRO in here, and we can see which SRO owns which projects. Or even we can come down here into our parent, and we can then group up the projects by our SRO first, and we can see which projects they belong to. Okay, one more thing to do. We jump back to our overview page. One last thing to add in is what are called slicers. So make sure I click on the white space. We're going to click in a slicer. I'm going to go and put that up here. And slicers allow you to basically filter down the data. So maybe we want to filter by our SRO. We probably want that as a drop down. And what we can now do is we can select one of our SROs, and that will automatically filter down the data we're seeing here just to those projects where Lucy is the SRO, or perhaps you want to see Amit's, Oliver's, Sheila's, whoever we want. And we can yeah, it's not limited to one, you can have multiple ones on there as well, and everything else. So hopefully what I demonstrated just here is ability to get some data, bring it in, create a report really quickly. We've just created some visuals. It's not the prettiest thing we've done in the world. We can make it look a little bit better by going into themes. And there are some kind of predefined themes for colors and fonts, and we can change these very quickly. You can create your own as well, so you're not limited to these. So if you have a particularly organizational set of colors or something you want, you can go for those. So I'm not quite sure what attracts me to this one, but I'm gonna stick with that. And now I'm going to click save. And we're now going to do the very last part of this, which is publishing this report up to the service. So to do that, we come up to the publish button. We need to choose a workspace. Now, when you on the Power BI service, you have essentially what are called workspaces. Imagine them as kind of SharePoint sites, I guess. That's the only way I can describe them. So there are areas dedicated to a particular theme or whatever it is that you want to report, whether that's projects or finances or people, whatever it may be. Every Power BI author essentially has their own workspace, and that's what I'll publish to you right now. I'm just going to click select. And that's now going to go through a process of publishing that report with the data as well up to the Power BI service. And then depending on which workspace I put that on, I will now be able to share that or other people will be able to come in and look at that data as well. So I'm going to click on the link. This now takes me over to the Power BI service. So essentially I am acting as a now a consumer. Haven't really got time to talk about all the amazing, wonderful things that you can do with the service, but just very quickly up here, you can do things like exporting this to PowerPoint or PDF or to Excel if you want to look at the data. You can actually export individual visuals as well. So as you hover over each of these visuals, you get this little pop-up thing over here. They give you some more options, so you can sort, you can interact with this. You can export the data if you need, so you can put that into Excel. You can chat in Teams, and this is really useful. So if you wanted to, if you had some filter context, maybe you were just looking at this from a particular SRO perspective, maybe you just look at it from Lucy's perspective, and she wanted to talk to someone about that, she could click on that, and that would open up basically a link into Teams, and then you could talk about that with whoever you wanted to. You've also got the ability to make this a little bit bigger as well, because these are great, but actually if you want to go into focus mode, basically you can get a full screen view of this as well, which is really helpful. As you can see here, we've got a couple of pages. We've got overview and we've got our Gantt as well. So everything we've got in that Power BI report, we were able to bring through onto the service. And the thing I said I was going to come back to is our Q&A over here. So this is really a bit within Power BI where it uses something called machine learning. And ultimately, this enables you to go in and ask questions in natural English, and Power BI will kind of do some analytics on the fly, and it can bring back some results. So as an example, let's just look at all our data first of all. So let's take Lucy out of there. There is no visual, there is no information on here that tells me the number of projects per SRA. However, I can go into this and I can ask that question very simply of Q&A. So I could just say number of projects by SRA, and you can see it's having a bit of a guess as well as to what I might be needing. And I can click that, and you can see instantly it's just built this little chart down here. I've done absolutely nothing. I haven't created that. That is Power BI doing that in the background. And you can see I can hover over these. It tells me the number in each of these different categories. And it's literally just done that through the magic of Power BI itself. And you're not just limited to projects. You could say, right, number of risks by SRO. And again, we're using the relationships to go down to the risk table, so we can see a bit more detail about that. And you can even put a bit of condition on here as well. Actually, maybe if we let's go for something nice and simple. So number of projects by RAG. Oops. RAG, I've got to remember the context now. That is RAG. And there we go. Instantly, it's told me there are 2 projects that are red based in this report, based on the data that I've got that filtered down to. It's actually the same number as we see there. So I think that brings me to an end today. Hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight as to what you can do with Power BI, how you can connect data, how you can build some visuals yourself and then publish them through, and ultimately how you can interact and the value you can get out of that data itself. I hope that was useful. I'm going to hand back to Rob now and see if there's any questions or anything else we can talk about at this stage.
Thank you ever so much, Toby. Thank you for the demo. I think yeah, let's just use the last couple of minutes here just to try and fire through any of the questions that we've had in. So one of the first ones, Toby, is what's the difference between Power BI developer and data analyst Power BI in Workplace?
I'm not sure there is a difference, to be honest. This may be just how certain workspaces are set up. So they tend to come with different roles, but that would probably be down to the governance that's been implemented by your organization to say these certain roles can do these different things.
Awesome, thank you, Toby. And then the next question is, can you explain how it got the postcode? Is it a new column, and how did it know to get the postal code? Is it inbuilt to the tool?
So the postcode was in the data itself. So you have to have some data in the background. The bit of magic in Power BI is that will link postcode to a position on a map.
Awesome, thank you. I think that was it for questions we have in the chat currently. Excuse me. Lots and lots to cover there, and thank you ever so much for the demo, Toby. I think it was yeah, very, very brave to go and create this from scratch in real time. We've just had another question come through. Is there a difference between PowerQuery and advanced PowerQuery?
I'm not aware there is advanced Power. I think there's within PowerQuery you can click on the advanced button, and basically what that allows you to do is see the code behind it. So PowerQuery uses a language called M. And you can go and you can actually type in the M yourself. You don't need to use PowerQuery to go and do some of the transformations. And M is a little bit more extensible. So if you need to do some much more complicated thing that you can't necessarily do through the user interface, that's where you would essentially go into the advanced option and type in some M itself.
Thank you ever so much for joining us, guys. I hope you enjoyed the session. As I said, make sure you go and check us out on YouTube and our LinkedIn page as well. We share a lot of updates and future roadmaps, and all of our upcoming webinars and content and events that we're doing are all on there as well. So thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of the day for those of you that have got much left to do, and we'll see you next time. Thanks ever so much.